The story is about one of the most important voices in American conservative Christianity.
This new way of life is what we're here to talk about.
Every white evangelical church in America has been influenced by Bill Gothard.
Coming back to God's principles.
Almost 3 million people went through his programs.
Reestablishing his ways.
Well-known names like the Duggar family from the reality show 19 Kids and Counting.
Almost 3 million people came into direct contact with his teaching.
Hey everyone, this is Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Friday, June 16th, 2023. I want to talk to you today about a new documentary that's being made called Until the Truth. This is an independent film that will be released hopefully at some point in 2024. And the film is going to be a feature documentary. It's currently still in production, and it explores the aftermath and the recovery of the women that sued Bill Gothard. It has been going on for 4 years. I had the opportunity this afternoon to speak to the director of this film, Sean Dimond, and got a better understanding of the approach these filmmakers are taking as they seek to not elevate the voices of the people that did bad things, but rather give space to those that were hurt by them, and what that looks like, and what it looks like to be on the receiving end of being hurt by a religious leader and then gaslit and slandered by a community for telling the truth. This will be an incredibly important documentary that I believe will empathetically share the stories of the individuals deeply impacted by Bill Gothard, and will enter into territory that most of us have not even heard. Many of us that have followed the story of the Institute of Basic Life Principles, that was famously made more notable through the Duggars of 19 Kids and Counting and Counting On. The Iblp's history is far greater than the involvement of the Duggar family. And while the Duggar family is the name that draws people in to learn more about this insidious organization, it is not a true representation of the individuals impacted by this institution. Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets, which was put out by Amazon recently, and multiple production companies put this together. The series blended the Duggars and the Iblp, and they added some sort of gotcha, salacious, sensationalized content into the series, obviously to draw in ratings and to make sure that there's interest. The wider audience that's watching this might not know anything about the Duggar family, might not know anything about the Iblp. Unfortunately, when you have streaming platforms in the world making content, there are a lot of fake voices that have a lot of rules about what need to be included in series, and a lot of it comes down to these moments of taking people on a journey where they learn something new, but there's like these aha moments, there's cliffhangers, there's pieces of it that maybe aren't so focused on survivors and are much more focused on the salacious, insidious aspects of it, which is really what Shiny Happy People did. It sort of ripped off the Band-Aid, or ripped off the veil of the Iblp. Now, the Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets didn't really tell us anything. For any of you that followed the Iblp and this whole organization, it won't tell you anything that you didn't already know. This documentary that's being made is going to be very different than what you saw on the Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets, because the focus of this is not going to be on Bill Gothard, but rather on those that he hurt. And the 8-minute trailer is incredibly powerful. So this film has been in production for more than 4 years and has followed a group of women that sued Gothard. The women that are featured in the series were plaintiffs, 2 of which were Jane Does. And we'll be learning who these Jane Does are for the very first time. We'll be hearing their stories for the very first time. And we're going to be hearing about what happened beyond the text that was written in the lawsuits. And it's what I think struck me most about it were the allegations were so much more significant and so much more. It was so much more than the way it was described in the lawsuit. And obviously in black and white text, you can't palpably feel what these women went through as children. In an effort to help sort of spread the word about this, because this film is still in production, they hope to have it done and released by 2024. And they obviously have money that needs to be raised to finish. I believe they need around $125,000 to finish this. And it's really been just like a labor of love and passion for the individuals involved. Those of you are wondering, is this going to be like an indictment and a slap on the face of the Christian church? No. I think what you have to understand about the Institute and Basic Life Principles and about a lot of these sort of subcultures within evangelical Christianity is that even though the IBLP is this organization that is existing outside of churches, the IBLP was in every church. They influenced so many evangelical churches. They were so deep into some of these Baptist churches. So many people went to the seminars. People were utilizing the teachings and the basic seminars and implementing these teachings to the extent that the umbrella of authority is very common in the IFB, which is the Independent Fundamentalist Baptist. The whole culture around authority is very much has been very much established and sort of pushed into evangelicalism as a product of the IBLP, and these ideas about not believing women and making SA an offense that is not taken seriously is a product of the IBLP influencing the evangelical culture. So it'll be impossible to tell the story about the IBLP without understanding that the IBLP is so ingrained in the evangelical Christianity movement. It doesn't mean that all evangelical churches are bad. It doesn't mean that all pastors are the same. It doesn't mean that all of them have the same rules, but the influence was there. And so you have to recognize these stories as a part of that. And I think that's sort of the point of this, is to show like, this is something that's happened in evangelicalism, and even if it makes you uncomfortable, it's much like with the Catholic Church. It made Catholics uncomfortable to learn about what was happening with the priests, but this is another moment where these churches are going to have to grapple with the magnitude of what occurred as a product of these teachings. So I'm going to show you some clips of which I've been given full permission to show you from the film director. And I just want to be extremely clear, I am not involved in the production of this film. I am not affiliated with this film. I am not featured in this film. This is a completely independent film. I just had the opportunity to reach out to the director and he responded. So this is the first part of it.
One of the hardest things to say to a victim is it will be a lifetime.
The story is about one of the most important voices in American conservative Christianity.
This new way of life is what we're here to talk about.
Every white evangelical church in America has been influenced by Bill Gothard.
Coming back to God's principles.
Almost 3 million people went through his programs.
Reestablishing his ways.
He built a global ministry that normalized molestation, rape, forced confinements, beatings.
There were literally hundreds of thousands of children raised in this program. Some are just now figuring out what exactly happened to them and just how wrong it was.
But this is not a story about him.
Heavenly Father.
It's about the questions we were left with after he abused us. It starts with telling the truth.
Disgraced minister Bill Gothard stepped down in 2014 after more than 30 women accused him of harassment and molestation.
Followers include well-known names like the Duggar family from the reality show 19 Kids and Counting.
Almost 3 million people came into direct contact with his teachings.
I want to understand how widespread this abuse is.
We have a severe problem in Protestant circles with sexual abuse.
Iblp and Gothard created an entire environment that didn't see sexual abuse as that important, or the damage from sexual abuse as that serious.
The way that this is already put together just in the very few minutes that I shared with you, and I'm going to show you some other portions of it, is that this really isn't about Gothard, but rather about the people that he impacted. And when you think about the culture that Gothard created, he was incredibly meticulous and extremely organized in the culture that he manifested and organized so that women would not be able to be believed, that he created a system that benefited him where it's always the fault of the woman. So anything that he would do, they would automatically not be believed. He was able to use parents and groom them to have their children come to his facilities. And then the system puts absolutely no importance into what happens when someone is SA'd. If you ever wonder why, none of these churches, you hear these pastors like Ben Seawald and all of these people around the Duggars, and no one cares about the women that are hurt or the people that are SA'd in these groups. It's always this going against the LGBTQ plus, and they're the real demons, right? And then it's like, don't look at this that we're doing over here. All of that is a tactic of diversion. So they're very meticulously deciding what problems that these people need to focus on. Their focus is the bad people out there are the ones that are gay, that are transgender. It's an agenda by these groups like Gothard and these leaders, these insidious leaders like Gothard, and then they ignore the SA and they bring in teachings where women are told there's no such thing as victims, and it's what you wore, it's the friends you hung out with, it's better that it happened to you because God will make you warmer. God will make you into a spiritual warrior. Like, they made people feel like they should want this to happen to them. That's not by accident. That's a perfect cover for someone like Gothard, and it's a cover for other people like Gothard to want to come into the system. So when you wonder about men like Jim Bob Duggar, why would they be attracted to this? Outside of the authoritarian structure that this offers to megalomaniac, narcissistic men, it also offers them a complete utter cover for any devious behavior that they want to participate in, because all of the rules favor them. So you'll see in the very beginning that Rachel Den Hollander will be a part of this, a very well-known psychologist, Dan Ellender, who has a school out in Seattle. He's written multiple books on trauma and recovery from SA. And you'll actually hear from numerous women that were part of the lawsuit, which is the part I'm going to show you right now.
He was the equivalent of the Pope.
Like, he couldn't do anything wrong.
He always had these pretty girls like following him around, and I always saw him as somebody that I admired.
My parents idolized him.
I believe in Jesus, and if he came down standing in the parking lot, that's how we all felt when Bill was around. It was very weird.
I was a 14-year-old little girl. He'd lead my hand into his groin area.
He kept rubbing my feet, and then he was going up my skirt.
Stood at the window where he groped me.
I was 14. I was beaten, blamed for the rape, and then put in solitary confinement. I told people about being raped as a young girl, and they didn't believe me.
Big smile.
Because I had blocked memories, and they didn't think that was possible. Step back a little bit more. There we go. Perfect.
When we're in trauma, our left frontal lobe, that portion of our brain that holds the ability to think, to reason, goes offline. So anyone who's gone through sexual abuse will have a kind of fragmentation in their ability to think.
It's made me feel like I'm not whole, and I'm sick and queasy. Like my body is telling me there's more to the story, but I have no memory of anything more. The fear of the unknown. And I don't know how much unknown is in me.
I had all these triggers and things I didn't know what to deal with, and I was crying all the time, and I decided I am not okay.
This is a cathartic moment for all of us to confront these stories.
Religion destroyed my life, literally destroyed my life.
I can't have anything to do with my family because of the abuse that is still happening. Gothard permeated our entire family.
We knew it would be a risk to speak out and to share our experiences about Gothard, but I don't think we ever fathomed how vulnerable it would make us.
The gaslighting, the insults.
No matter how hard I speak the truth, no one believes.
The cost to the survivors is deep institutional and community betrayal.
These horrific.
So the women that you saw in there were plaintiffs. Some of them were plaintiffs. Actually, there was a couple commentators in there that were not, like Rachel Denhollander, and then the woman that was speaking about that's sitting in the church setting. But the other women were part of the lawsuit, and what they experienced within the Iblp, within the facility, directly from Gothard and from employees and staff, is unconscionable, and it is so heartbreaking. And to know that for them to speak out, they were raised in a culture where women were not given any ability to have any life outside of being a wife and making babies. They were neglected educationally by their parents. Many of them had to go on and get GEDs. And, you know, one of the women in here that'll be featured, she's currently working on her master's degree. And I think you recognize that the system was built to silence women because women are to submit to their husbands, women are to, and even girls are to submit to their fathers. And so women don't have a voice. And that's done purposely by Gothard so that anything that does happen won't be believed. They will not be taken seriously. And so these women, they have memories that are fragmented due to the trauma. They have pieces of it they clearly know happened to them and other parts of it that they don't know. And that one woman said it was the unknown, that she doesn't know how much is in there, and she can't, it hurts her to know that she can't remember. And that unknown can be very painful for someone because something happened to you and you can't remember. And so the series is really about working with these women to understand not only what happened to them, but how do you recover from that? How do you hear your body? How do you feel your body? These are women that were in a system where they learned nothing about sexual education. Many of them knew nothing about female anatomy. Many of them had learned nothing about human intimacy of any kind. They didn't have the terminology or the communication skills to recognize what was happening to them. They were never told about, you know, even having their periods. You know, every facet of their bodies was kept away from them, but then there was this overwhelming like fixation on sexuality within the teachings, but telling them that they couldn't feel those things, they couldn't know about those things. So again, it creates people that can't even identify what's happened to them. It makes perfect victims. They've never been taught this is what happens when this happens. They've never been taught about their bodies. They don't know what's good, bad, or good touch or bad touch. They don't know anything. And so anything can be nothing. And so leaving the system and figuring out, okay, that's not right. This isn't what I was supposed to go through. And having to unpack and unravel what actually happened to their bodies, what they went through, and then realizing, oh my gosh, this was SA. This was grooming. This was harmful. This wasn't innocent. You know, a lot has been made about these allegations claiming that there wasn't physical contact. But it's very clear that these women had physical contact, that he physically contacted them. There's a portion in the trailer where one woman discusses him pulling her into a closet and assaulting her. This isn't an isolated incident of one woman accusing him. of R, an essay. This is multiple women. It's a pattern of behavior by Gothard. And some people were easier for him to exploit than others. And it's also a story about how when they did tell the truth, their families didn't believe them, their friends didn't believe them, their families stuck with the cult and the church, and they stuck by Gothard. They didn't have any urgency or understanding or care or concern for them. And by speaking the truth and sort of shattering this perfect, shiny, happy family that they thought they were creating, the parents, instead of protecting their daughters, manifested and sort of enabled this to happen to them. They allowed their daughters to go with this man. They became a part of the grooming process. And the parents are many of them can't face that. And so rather than facing their culpability in this, while they were victims of his grooming, they also helped perpetuate this, handing their daughters on a silver platter to this man. And these women now, by telling the truth, are having to make very difficult choices in their lives, which include leaving their families because their families don't want to deal with it, which is exactly what Jill Duggar is facing. Her family doesn't want to deal with the fact of what Josh did and what happened to her. Instead of that, they want to just put it down, stuff it down. They're in a culture that doesn't take it seriously. And so rather than believing her, it's easier to discard her. And if she tells the truth, she can just be branded a liar. And they said they were not prepared to deal with the gaslighting and with the amount of, slander and driving the bus over them for telling the truth. The truth is not pretty. The truth is not the evangelical dream that Gothard promised these families. And it's an entire system that has created so much brokenness and pain. And it's at the expense of children, and it was happening in churches all across the country. Not just, the Iblp was an institution that sort of existed in its own little sphere, and these families were going to regular churches. Many of them were you probably had members of the Iblp in your church. You might still too have them there today. That's how widespread this was. This last part is how it sort of goes into more detail about the
Specific stories must be counted as part of, this is what evangelicalism is. This is what evangelicals have done.
It makes me so, I go back and forth between extremely sad and extremely angry. I'm like, why? How hard is it? How hard is it to say this is true? These things happened. They were wrong.
The things that have brought us shame, powerlessness, a sense of betrayal, there are no quick cures. There are no magic bullets.
Say something that you need to believe about yourself, and if you say it, this whole group is going to repeat it.
I am not responsible for the sins of others.
I am not responsible for the sins of others.
No one changes without the ability to grieve the losses that we've endured.
The process starts with being able to accurately name what was done to you, to put words to it, reorienting yourself to truth.
He would pull me back into that closet, the same stuff he'd been doing for years.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 16. There's been a lot of therapy since then, but you guys know, obviously.
Yeah.
I know that God's love is real, and now I'm creating beauty out of the ashes that Bill Gothard left me in.
It's unfair that I have days where I can't get out of bed, but I believe I need to process this, I need to work through this.
Things that Gothard did to us, our parents did to us, the things our church did to us. You either pretend it didn't happen, or you do the hard work. Recovery is long and hard and messy.
It doesn't happen quickly.
The recovery process first starts with truth.
And being able to feel and believe that truth is a very long process.
It's really hard to go back to those memories.
But if we have the integrity to actually name what's true about what my body suffered, true about how my family often set the context for the abuser to enter. If I'm willing to engage the truth will set you free.
It's the only way, because if it's not going to be true and it doesn't have truth in it, then I'm not interested in that life anymore.
What I find the most powerful and impactful about this trailer is that women that have not had a voice, have not been taken seriously, that were not properly educated, that were denied basic necessities as children, have found a way and a group of people that are on the same page as them, that are not using this story to exploit them, that are being kind and sympathetic to their journeys and giving them the space to be as open as they are comfortable about what they experienced and what it looks like to be on the other side of that. You're seeing a woman that has to move away from her home because her family refuses to believe that Gothard hurt her. A family that refuses to look at the bigger picture and is taking the side of Gothard and not believing their daughter. Gothard permeated and infested and infected and took over homes all over this country, all over the world. Millions of people went through his seminars. Thousands of children in the United States grew up under this system. And you are seeing in real time a woman saying, I can't live in that world because I can't live where there's not truth. That is what the Duggars, in essence, are doing with Josh. They are not living in truth. When you see all of the posts by all of the kids still in the system, with the gaslighting, the deflection, and the making Jill look like the bad guy and the bad girl, Jill is the same woman that moved out. I'm not sure if Jill would ever speak to this group or ever connect with these women, but I feel like her story and them connecting, they could all learn from each other and teach one another and bond. The strength of the bonds of these women in this group is so palpable. And this film, what I love about it the most is that this director is doing this in a way where there's no strings attached. There's no networks, no streaming, no platform dictating the direction of what this looks like. No agendas. They are doing from a trauma-based perspective. They are bringing in psychological experts. They're not performing therapy, but they are looking at this as, how does this affect the body? How does this change the person? What does it feel like to be a part of a system where the truth doesn't matter? We live in a world right now where the truth has become fiction to some people, where we are gaslit and lied to about the realities that we live in. When this truth stops mattering, we can end up in dictatorships where fascism takes over. We can end up with systems like Gothard where families are allowing his rules and control to trickle down and control their children and take away education and rights from their daughters. Each one of the women that is bravely sharing their story is doing this for the first time in such a very public space. They deserve so much compassion. They deserve to be believed. They deserve to tell their own stories in their own time, in their own way. And I'm so proud of each one of them for taking this time, for doing not what's easy, actually doing what's hard and telling the truth. regardless of the ramifications, regardless of the fact that they might get called liars and people on the internet might attack them. Nothing can take away the truth. Everything else is noise. And I'm so hopeful that this project will get completed. They want to have this done and out by 2024. They plan to release this as an independent film where they will hope to sell it as a final product to a network that will put it on a streaming platform. And that's their goal at this point. They have set up a fundraising effort where they can do money that you can donate to help them finish the project. They have investment opportunities. But my purpose in sharing this here is that this is the story that needs to be told. These are the women that need to tell it. And this is the final nail in the coffin, that if you don't believe that this happened, if you don't believe the victims, if you're going to still sit back and say the Duggars could have done more, or it's not that big of a deal, what happened? What happened in the Duggars household happened in thousands of families across the country, and families are being ripped apart and ruined by the Iblp. This matters. And I'm so grateful these women found this amazing team to help them tell their stories. I've gotten to know a few of them over the last few years, and I'll say personally, I'm not affiliated with this series. I'm not in this series. I am not at all connected to this, but I'm just so glad to see them finally sharing the truth. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below.